Our weekly news show at America's Third Party focuses on news you can use, featuring stories that show you the real side of American politics. We are not the mass media. We bring you information that is vital to your survival in these tough times. I'm Jon Sponheim, and you're listening to America's Third Party News.
And the top story this week, in my opinion, is Barack Obama met with Hugo Chavez, the socialist dictator of Venezuela, embracing him and looking for better relations with this country. Apparently he wants to buy cheap oil from Venezuela as opposed to drill for domestic oil here in the U.S. We think Barack Obama's priorities are confused. And at the same time, with all the pleasant relations he's having with South America, the president of Bolivia, Evo Morales, asked that Barack Obama repudiate an assassination attempt on him. Barack Obama, in his weekly address, a radio address, says that he's going to analyze the budget line by line with a pay-as-you-go rule that was used in the 1990s. Well, upcoming this Monday, he's going to have a full cabinet meeting for the first time, and he's going to ask them to find ways to cut money. Well, this is coming from a man who's spent close to $3.2 trillion with an estimated budget potential of close to $9 trillion in the next year and a half. This is unprecedented. So going line by line will ultimately accomplish nothing after the fact. It's going to rob our future generations of so much money that every man, woman, and child as they grow up will be paying $114,000. That's right, $114,000 just to serve the interest on the amount of money that Barack Obama is borrowing from our future. This past week, Barack Obama flew to Mexico, and he met with President Calderon, and he talked about drug trade, trying to mitigate the drug trade problem. He also unveiled his plan to ban assault weapons, and we believe that that is just a temporary solution and isn't going to solve the problem, in that average citizens couldn't get assault weapons, yet criminals could. The real drug trafficking problem in Mexico is related to the amount of drugs that we purchase. Now, Barack Obama said in his weekly address last week, online town meeting, that he didn't believe that legalization of marijuana would actually help our economy. Well, just this past week, the ambassador to Mexico suggested that maybe we should legalize marijuana in the United States. Even they're thinking positively about our solution. And at America's Third Party, we do support the legalization of marijuana. It will open the way for the growth of hemp, industrial hemp, which will create hempoline, a form of biodiesel that can be run in all of our big rig diesels and average cars that run on diesel in America. We think that's a good solution. Plus, we could tax the marijuana that this country grows. So Barack Obama is coming from all different angles and doesn't really have a handle on how to handle the drug cartels down in Mexico. He also flew to Spain, attending the 5th annual Summit of the Americas. And the focus is on Cuba. Cuba has been kept from the Summit on the Americas because they haven't really been greeted by America as a nation that should join. We've had an embargo against them. Now, Barack Obama is starting to talk about lifting trade relations, opening up trade relations with Cuba, and lifting the embargo hasn't been accomplished, but we'll talk about that later. At America's Third Party, we do believe that we should open the door to trade, just a little bit, with Cuba. After all, we trade with China, and they're a communist bloc nation, just like Cuba, and we believe that we could certainly open up trade with Cuba because they have a great number of public doctors that could actually help our nation alleviate its healthcare problem. And in Sri Lanka, off the coast of India, a 25-year civil war holiday ceasefire with Tamil Tiger rebels has been suspended when the government started pushing into a no-fire zone, which was a Tamil Tiger holdout. More than 100,000 civilians are trapped in a 7.7 square mile zone, and 28 civilians were killed. In Thailand, although the anti-government protesters have gone home, Thai army troops are still present at key locations in the capital of Bangkok. The city remains under a state of emergency. Pirate attacks continue. An American rescue, Dutch rescue, and a French rescue have gone on during the past week. Captain Phillips was freed, after all, and the American government succeeded in their mission to accomplish that goal. However, the Somalian pirates telegraphed a long-standing anger and hatred and threat against anyone, especially the U.S., that's traveling through their waters, and they will continue the piracy. Barack Obama did not come out with a very strong message during that time period against the pirates. We have a multitude of solutions that we'd like to employ. At America's Third Party, we'd like to see electric fencing placed on cargo ships and cruise liners where the electric fencing is facing outward and no one can scale the sides. The captain can toggle these on and off. We'd like to see 50 caliber machine gun turrets on the bows of vessels to deter piracy. And we'd also like to do our airdrop food plan over the area of Somalia to bring the people to an economic solution that would ultimately prevent them from engaging in this piracy behavior. And there's another solution that the UN could actually employ, making the waters safer by simply monitoring the ports with an armed militia. The ports of Somalia could be monitored by UN forces, preventing these pirates from going out into the open waters and terrorizing people. And this past week, there have been Tea Party protests around the country, some as large as 10,000 people in Chicago and New York. And these organizations that are putting these on actually have a good message. They're complaining about the excessive expenditure that Barack Obama and state and local officials are making in a time when we need to be much more austere and careful with our money. I support the idea, in principle, that all Tea Parties are truly trying to fight for what really matters. The Tea Parties themselves have been receiving a lot of support from the Republican Party, and people like Newt Gingrich have gone on Fox News and talked about how important they are as well. We think that anything that exposes the American people to this incredible ripoff of their tax dollars is important. And of course, Rod Blagojevich, he pled not guilty to racketeering and fraud charges this past week, and he tried to get released to go on a reality TV show where he could earn as much as $80,000 for each episode. Well, that hasn't happened. The judge hasn't given him the permission to do that. He's going to have to face charges and try to find money some other way here in the United States. Goldman Sachs was trying to sell off $5 billion in common stock last week to repay the government for the bailout money they received, $10 billion, in order to get out from under the regulations. And this really tells us that many companies, many banks, many firms are trying to decouple themselves from their obligations to the government, which is in many ways a good sign, but to the government it's not, because part of Tim Geithner's plan and Ben Bernanke's plan is to print up a tremendous amount of money and take control over our local banks and institutions. And they've done this by handing out the TARP money and forcing banks to take it. Now, Goldman Sachs is just one of many that could ultimately pay that money back quickly just to get out from under the burden and the requirements imposed on them by Barack Obama. Now, the Fed bought $7.37 billion in Treasury bonds last week and $5.153 billion in agency securities. And this helped the stock market rebound. But for the most part, the stock market is still hovering around 8,000. And on Thursday, Barack Obama announced his high-speed rail plan for America, an $8 billion proposal that'll be built into the stimulus plan. Well, we took matters into our own hands. At America's Third Party, we went on Friday to a transit meeting where we met with our U.S. House of Representative Rick Larsen. Rick Larsen had not run a actual return on investment analysis on any of the money being spent on transit, and he knew of no studies that were done on a national level. We have to get a return on our investment. We have to make Amtrak affordable. People don't take Amtrak because it's too expensive, and Amtrak runs at a loss. So we need different ideas, and that's what we have at America's Third Party. So that's it for this week's wrap-up of the news. Listen to us every week and get the top highlights of what's going on in the world and here at home in the United States and how it affects you. I'm David Jon Sponheim, and I'm running for president in 2012.
Thank you for listening to America's Third Party News. I'm David Jon Sponheim, and catch me every week as I recap all of the news from around the world.